Hello all, and welcome to the very first High Africa, or more specifically, HiA BEATS podcast. I'm your host, Sake, or Sakaine, call me whichever. And we've been graced by a very big presence in the African music scene, and soon in a political presence as well. Mr. Seun Kuti, welcome.
Yeah, how you doing, brother?
I'm good. Yourself? I'm pronouncing it right. Yeah, it's Seun.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not
good.
too bad.
Because I've heard so many. I've heard Seun. I've heard Sean. Please correct me if I'm saying it wrong. Yeah, but I've heard it many times.
Me too. It's the Caucasians that.
No, trust me. I suffer from the same. I suffer from the same issues. I've been called Sakane, Sakani, all types of names.
I mean, I can pronounce Schwarzenegger, and not Schwarzenegger. We can pronounce all these names. So
yeah,
people must learn our
some
names.
kind of effort. Yeah.
He's there. Get it.
Yeah. So welcome to the podcast. I want to start with kind of a deeper question. You as an artist, you as a political figure, and now as potentially a politician, could you tell us what for you is the role of an artist in politics, and how can an artist use their skills and their position to influence politics?
Well, first and foremost, I think everybody in the world is a politician. Even when people say, "Oh, I don't do politics. I'm not involved. I don't talk politics," that in itself is a political statement. So we are just either active or inactive. And we all already agree that participating in elections and voting, which is political participation, even if it is the most basic participation. So politics is something that everybody is the duty of everybody. So I understand if in some societies and communities it is not encouraged, maybe because they've achieved certain level of blanket social welfareism and also some kind of economic and social progress. It's okay, let me let the wheels turn as it is. But in a situation like ours in Africa, where we are bedeviled with all sorts of problems, and especially the chronic underrepresentation and underdevelopment of both the African people and the African society, respectively. It is, I think, suicidal for one to be apolitical. We all have to be political, to a certain extent. The times of sitting on the fence and all of that, I don't think is existentially correct. What do I mean by that?
But then for you, in your
I think if African people say that politics doesn't matter, that means we are saying, if an African person says politics doesn't matter to me, that means this person is saying the future of our environment in Africa doesn't matter to them. Environmental pollution, desecration. You understand? The future of your children don't matter to you. You're all about that paper, man. That means even your money, your currency doesn't matter to you at the end of the day. So as artists, I believe it's our duty, if we want to be active politically, to at least raise our consciousness through meditation and education. You know.
Meditate. So would you say that that is your political message?
What do you mean? As in,
Like so uh, for you as an artist and as a politician, what would you say is your your topic, your message that you want to send to?
I'm not a politician. I'm a revolutionary.
A revolutionary.
At the moment, politics, we're on the way to being politicians. But at the moment, we are revolutionary Pan-Africanists. Trying to build a political structure to represent our people correctly. I wouldn't tag myself a full-fledged politician yet, but I'm getting in the ring, ding dong.
But you say you're revolutionary. Is that because you do not believe in the current, political landscape? Do you not believe in the
I don't believe in the status quo,
All right, and so maybe you could like expand a bit on this idea of revolution. You say this new party that you just started, MOP, or not new, but that you have renewed, is based on Pan-Africanism and Socialism. What exactly are those two things?
I didn't hear the last part of the question.
Sorry. So you just mentioned revolutionary and this Pan-African socialist idea. What are those two things?
For me, revolutionary today simply means trying to change the status quo. Right? That as much as possible, as motherland people, we see that the system we're currently living under does not give us the representation that we need to achieve our full potential. And our dream is to upend this status quo. So in that aspect, I believe that I am revolutionary. Also, when we say Pan-Africanist and Socialist, it means Africa has for too long represented the interest of everything else in the world except African interests. And it is time that Africa and its resources and its people and its labor, begin to put the needs and the aspirations of African people first. That for me is what Pan-Africanism means. It means living in a world where African ability is no longer in doubt. That for me is truly what Black power is all about. Black power is all about the affirmation or reaffirmation of African ability. Because all over Africa, we have ruling elites that want African people to believe that we lack the ability to build great things. From their old conspiracy in hiding our histories, teaching us all the wrong things they teach us in our schools here, that we all have to grow up as adults to begin to discover the history of our people instead of learning it as kids in school. So it's in that part of our brain that builds our character. It has to become a conscious effort as adults. So other than those, they still, through their own inability or lack of will to build great things and create great nations in present day Africa, we are looked down upon due to the actions of the worst of us who are holding powerful positions. So this also puts a inferiority complex in the mind of young people when they look at their nations, when they see that, in almost a century now, because most of Africa has been free now for 60 years, 70 years. All of Africa, no nation has solved any problem, be it education, be it transportation, be it legal legislation, be it police enforcement, security, be it labor welfare, be it citizens' welfare, be it healthcare, whatever it is that has been ailing our people is still present in Africa today. And that for me shows that there's either an inability among our ruling class or a lack of will among our ruling class, both political and...
Yeah, well, so I wanted to go into that because me, as a young African who has grown up in a self-proclaimed Pan-African household, you hear this tale of
If I just finish the point.
Go on.
So what I was trying to say is that, so for me, that's what it means to be a Pan-Africanist. That we have the ability to be, and for me, it also explains what I mean by socialist. Socialist for me simply means someone that believes that our ancestors did not put all our wealth that we have in Africa here, just so a few Africans can live like lords. So that one man in Nigeria can be richer than everybody in England. Can you believe that? There are people in Nigeria that are richer than the richest man in England. How is that justified? You understand? So for me, that's simply what it means to be a socialist. Socialism has been looked at in the world over through the lens of the Cold War, through the propaganda of the United States against their European communist cousins. So for me, but to show you the strength of socialism and the truth of it is that even in America now, one of their strongest movements and politician, Bernie Sanders, identified as a democratic socialist. So even in England, we also saw the rise of the Labour Party through the socialist ideology of Jeremy Corbyn. I'm not saying that because they are doing it is why we are doing it or why it is correct to do it. I'm just saying that even in the nations where socialism was most criminalized, that they are embracing it too for the betterment of the middle class and the poor. So, and this was the system that African people always had. Our housing in Africa has always been socialist. It is in 2 generations now. Everybody in Africa are living on the streets, are living in shanty towns, in refuse dumps. The land has always been social in Africa. Everybody is entitled to land as an African. What happened to that law? Our politicians are always happy to call themselves African politicians. But what happened to the fact that all African people deserve land in Africa? Where is that part of being African? It's not only by wearing African attire, dancing African dance.
But I guess my is it fair to accuse us Africans of lethargy or not fighting hard enough? Because I could argue that a lot of the world right now is not.
It's not lethargy, it's a spell. We've been under a spell for a while, because you have to understand that Africans were colonized, we were not enslaved. So there's a slight difference. Our oppression has always had an African face. So you go into a school in Africa because it's owned by an African, all teachers are African, you think it is an African school. It's not like being enslaved, where as soon as you walk into the institution of education there, you can see immediately that it's not of you. So many of our cousins in Europe and America, that's why some of our greatest scholars for Pan-Africanist ideology, and also African people's liberation globally have been our cousins in the diaspora, because from a young age, they've been able to differentiate European education and created in the weekends, Pan-Africanist education for the kids to balance, what they call the white man education in those days. That's something that we lacked in Africa, because instead of going to Pan-Africanist schools in Africa, we went to the church at weekends to further entrench this spell into our minds. We went to the mosque on Fridays, church on Sunday, So we further entrenched this spell, whereby we truly believe the lies that are told to us. So it makes us feel as if Africa is not worth defending. You know, that the sooner we shed this African identity and attach ourselves to this progressive civilization, the better it is for African people. But the thing that we've never asked is this progress that you are promising, what is it? This is a question that has never been asked. What is this progress really? You know, is it okay? We can move faster, you know, in cars and planes, but the solar ice caps are now melting. So how are we judging this progress? The rainforests are being destroyed, you know, but yeah, we have some billionaires in the world now. People can go on holidays. Is that what we are exchanging? You know, we can talk to our friends on the phone real quick. We don't have to write letters. So, we have emails.
So let me,
you know,
let me ask you then, what is your you know, vision for the future? What is your idea of progress?
I think one of my biggest I'm tasked as if we're able to have any kind of political power is that of restoring balance. I think restoring balance has to be the number one priority of humanity. Not only balance amongst the different classes in society, but balance between man and nature. Once more, man must begin to believe the truth again. It is the duty of all governments in the world that are actually pro-human to remove the hubris of man now that make us believe that we are above nature, that make us believe that it is appropriate to bend nature to our will and not to find a compromise with nature as it must be. You know, this lack of our ability to compromise, not our really, Western civilization's inability, you know, because I don't like using the word man for everybody because listen, global warming is not man's fault. Global warming is Western civilization's fault. When they came to Africa, we were the original green people, man. You know, everything in balance, and they called us savages. You know, savages that refuse to be civilized, and they forced us to become civilized. Listen, because when you say we invented everything, we made the plane, we made the car, we made the economy, we made the time, we made everything. So who created global warming? Oh, it's man. Man created global warming. So
Are you excited about it?
I feel like the number one duty is to create to create the new man in Africa. You know, the new African man who.
So I want to ask, with this idea that
coming from and where it needs to go, you know, in relation to what is happening globally today.
But so that's my question. With this whole idea that, you know, the Western world has kind of put us in this situation, whether it be environmentally, politically, economically, what is now Africa's role in this? Like, how does Africa balance out the wrongdoings of the West? And is it our duty?
Well, it is our duty to save. It is everybody's duty to save the planet, because to a certain extent, everybody was a willing accomplice. In all our communities, there are many African people benefiting from the destruction of nature today that we African people have not held to account. Because we want their jobs, you know, we want their largesse, we want their company, we want to know them, we want to tweet them, you know. So,
do you believe in the idea of?
So I feel, as I said before, in us being honest about our task, there are certain steps that we also take that will force other people to become more respectful of nature. Africa supplies the world many of the raw materials that leads to this, how do I put it? That leads to this complete imbalance that, the ecosystem of the world experience, both aquatic, both floral, both human. People don't even talk about how people just commit suicide today. When they say, oh, there are so many unexplained deaths in the animal kingdom, and we in the human world, see completely happy people killing themselves, people just dying. We don't relate those things. We don't relate it to how the rainforests are just, the fires in California, the fires in South America. We don't see that as we burn nature, we also burn ourselves. Maybe not literally on fire, but we do with the wars that we fight. That the more imbalance we create in nature, the more imbalance we create among humanity.
Do you believe in the idea of Ubuntu?
Of course, it is interpreted differently in all of Africa and all of original humanity. I don't think Ubuntu is truly an African thing. Ubuntu is the name that African people call a human thing, and this human spirit is what has been under attack for over 500 years by Western civilization, basically, and Western epistemology, for the past 500 years, even from the time of Plato. If you read Urugu by Marimba Ani, she breaks that down naturally and academically, how this real spirit of man, but she was saying it from an African perspective, as being the focus of so much retribution. Even in the world today, love is now being seen as a sign of weakness, whereas love is the greatest strength that humanity possesses. Many young people are ashamed to tell their friends they're in love with someone. Even many mature people. So this is how you understand how twisted, how the imbalance, affects even humanity in a conscious level. You understand? So much toxic behavior being validated in and amongst ourselves.
Well, I wanted to ask about your music, because a lot of these ideas they come out in your music, in your songs, your albums. From the start, you've been very political, and I just want to know, like, the creative process behind all that. Does it start with the message? Does it start with the music? How does it come to be?
Well, I always have ideas of things I want to talk about. So every time I hear, because I believe that music is truly a gift. If you can make music, is truly a gift, and not everything that is called music today is truly music. So music is truly a gift, and if you have the gift,
could you maybe elaborate on that statement?
Yeah, I believe that music must serve a certain purpose in the positive development of whatever audience it is targeted at. Music is not something that everybody can do. But today there's music that everybody can do. Everybody is a musician today. 80% of African people all over the world believe automatically that they are musicians. It's crazy. So aside from this, there's a spirit in music too. That if you don't possess it, you don't possess it. You might be the biggest star in the world, don't get me wrong. It doesn't mean you're a musician. You understand? This is just the way the world is. Trump is the president of the United States. This is the world. George Bush was the president of the United States. Obama. So anybody can be anything. So Buhari is the president of Nigeria. The world is not making sense. Trust me. You don't have to be a musician to be the world's biggest music star.
But then what about, you say that you can be you just need a good producer.
No, you just need.
But what about the connecting power?
You need a good backdoor deal with YouTube and Instagram. That's all.
But then what about these big artists who maybe the message isn't exactly positive, but the power that they hold with having such a reach, is that not important? Is that like to be ignored, or?
The thing about that is, for me, this is where the institutions of influence I talked about before. This for me is how they tie into the oppression of African people directly. Because these institutions, that's the educational institutions, the religious institutions, and media. And media, when I say media, I mean film, I mean music, I mean news, I mean TV programs, I mean everything that is used to pass information to the society. When all these institutions are, under the control of only a minority of society who control, also political and economic power, you find that it is their spirit that is transmitted through these institutions. So for me, anybody is making music in Africa, I am not transmitting the spirit of the majority of Africans. I don't feel you are fulfilling your potential as an African musician. Or if you're even a musician at all, really.
It's funny you say that. I guess I've noticed a lot of that.
If you're a musician in Africa and you are portraying a lifestyle that makes the majority of Africans feel inferior and little, and not only portraying conspicuous consumption, but validating it as the reason to exist, then you are doing a disservice to your own people. And I'm sorry, as I said before, music cannot be a disservice to the people. It just can't be. It's like trying to prove a negative,
No, it's funny you say that, because recently I've had the thought or realization that a lot of artists. I live in South Africa, Cape Town, and a lot of the people in the industry, especially hip hop music, hip hop R&B industry, there's a lot of idealization of this American way of living. Once they make it, they automatically think that the life that they need to be living.
Are you talking of African pop or American pop?
I'm talking about African artists, young African artists, now trying to live a lifestyle that is being shown to them from abroad, from the West, from the US, from Europe. And it just coincides to what you were saying, I think.
Because we as Africans, we need to have a discussion about how the same companies that own the luxury brands also own the big radio stations and TV stations in Africa. We need to have that discussion if we want to really get to the root of that. Because it is appropriate for the people that own the TV, like Viacom, a company like Viacom, for example, where that has ties to Gucci and everybody, and all the expensive car brands. All these guys have ties to one another, so they use what they have to sell what they use what they have to get what they want, I guess.
But how do you portray that to young African artists? Because of course, you grew up in a very political household, very musical household. You've kind of had, in a way, protection or so to speak, from this kind of Western idea. But for young artists who are just trying to express themselves, trying to be what they see on TV, how do you? I'm making assumptions. You can disagree. You can disagree.
Completely. What you can say is this: growing up with my dad, right, gave me a kind of knowledge that there was something else happening. Because my dad died when I was 14. And your biggest influence at that age are just your peers. You just do what your peers do, you know. And I was a normal kid listening to hip hop all day, getting in trouble and shit, you know. I didn't care about anything, but I knew what my dad was saying. But you understand, as I said, none of the institutions of influence were validating my father's position on things. So when I went to school, my teacher didn't say the same things. They didn't say the same thing on TV. So my dad's words were just, okay, my dad's words. You know, as a kid, it was difficult to understand, you know, the depth of his convictions, because there was just no validation of that in society. So trust me, there's no this programming is everywhere, even in the Calcutta Republic. You know?
But then, so when did you?
Higher consciousness is a personal journey. You know, even if your father is Fela, you have to come to the knowledge and conclusion on your own. You know, you have to come to the realization of the true situation of Africanness, the true situation of blackness in the world today, as is.
Is there a moment? Is there a moment for you where this kind of realization happened, or was it more of a, you know, over time?
Yeah, I mean, okay, you know, so everything is about, you know, the spell. All the spell does is it constructs pillars in your consciousness, you know, about society, about life. You know, and generally when one of these pillars collapse irreparably, the rest begin to collapse, you know, and then you begin to say, okay, if this thing is a lie, what other lies have I been told? You know, what other lies or what other people's opinions have been sold to me as facts? Because one of the things I realized as my consciousness grew is that many of those things that are told to us as, you know, solid truths are just opinions. Untested opinions, especially in the African society. We just embrace them, you know, without even test running it. No vroom, you know, we just pay, sign the papers, pick up the keys, and the car breaks down 10 yards from the store. You know? So I feel for that reason, I don't try to impose consciousness or Pan-Africanist consciousness on anybody. I feel if you're an African, and even with all the information we have today, with all the work everybody is doing generally, you feel you need to be specially preached to, you know, then, you know, the movement is not waiting for you, you know.
But then you say you don't impose this, you try not to impose this idea of Pan-Africanism on anybody. Would you say that it was, you know, being in a very active household, was that idea tried to be imposed on you, and did you ever try to rebel against it?
Exactly. My dad never tried to impose his ideas as well, you know. But I said it helps having a father that stood for the same thing, that understood that. So as I came to the realization, it began to validate a lot of the lessons that I was getting from my father. You understand? I began to independently validate them and not wait for society to validate them. Not independently of my own power, because that would be pure hubris, but, you know, relative to the knowledge that I had gained.
But maybe we can, you know, pause from that and, you know, go back a bit to music. You know, as a musician, I also consider myself a musician, or at least a music producer. But you know, in my family, there's not much. We all listen to music, but we don't. I'm really the only one who practices it, makes it. I guess I wanted to ask you, like, how do you, in such a musical family, how do you, you know, create your own identity within that?
The truth is, I've just really always been me, on stage and off stage. You know, so for me, when people talk about like, I don't have a PR handler, I have a PR guy that sets my interviews. I don't even ask for my questions beforehand. You know, for me, I just feel like the less I try to brand and fake it, the more I can handle it. The more I'm just me. You know, the more.
Would you say you've always been like that? Because you started, your career started very young.
Huh?
Was it? I'm asking you, has it always been that way? Because your career started when you were very young. Have you always felt that way?
Yeah,
or
you know,
is it something that developed over
time? I started playing
time?
in my dad's band, and I've always played in my dad's band. You know, so for me, I think that also kind of like remove the need to create some kind of identity, because I was Fela's son, I was playing in Fela's band, then Fela died, and I kept playing in the band, you know, so I was just, and that has been me. I've never tried to, you know, be what I'm not. I've always been me, musically and artistically, you know, so for me, my music is a projection of myself. You know, I try as much as possible for my music to represent where I am as a man, both physically and musically. I mean, what I'm thinking, what I'm going through, the issues that matter to me, the words I want to share, what I want my kids to hear when I'm dead. You know, none of this internet. What do I want my kids seeing online about me after I'm dead? You know, it is that their dad was in a club fighting and, you know, making a fool of himself in public, you know, or he tried to liberate his people. You know, so for me, that has always been my own, you know, so I've never tried to play to the gallery and get some kind of recognition from that. For me, and I think the same goes for people in my family. Because my dad, even though we were kind of the Fela Kutis, we were raised very independently and individually. You know, I don't think any one of my siblings are alike. You know, our personalities were molded by completely different circumstances, even though we are from the same household and from the same dad. You know?
So it's very easy to differentiate from each other.
Exactly. You know, I think that's also our background. We were raised really, really, you know, individually.
But then, you know, aside from your father's music, who else has influenced you and your career, your music choices, or just life?
The truth is this, I think musically, I've always been influenced by not only my father's music, but every kind of thing that I feel I can't do. When I see people doing things I can't do, it influences me because I want to get into that music and try to learn how to do that musically. So a lot of my influences have been saxophonists, like Grover Washington.
Okay.
You know, my favorite saxophonist is Sonny Rollins. And everybody says John Coltrane, but for me, Sonny Rollins is like, you know, just for technique, you know, just to know what you can, the range of what the saxophone can do. You know, even though I'm an alto saxophonist. Yeah, I love James Brown as a showman, as a musician, as a form of expression. Because James Brown himself, him as a human, is a form of on stage. Yeah. You know,
But then, so do you, these your kid? How many you have kids?
I have a kid now.
Or just one? Just the one?
You know that is confirmed as mine.
I mean, we were never worrying, but and so, well, whose music would you raise your kid on then?
Huh?
Whose music? You know, obviously, I'm sure your kid will grow up listening to music, playing music.
She's really into pop music, you know, but she's 7. You know what I mean? Let her enjoy herself.
But you don't have any influence there.
My dad never really tried to control my musical taste as well, so I've never been one to control the musical tastes, you know, of my kids. She just listens to what her friends listen to. So she has a good time listening to her. She's a big lover of folk music. And also, she makes her own music.
Okay.
I don't want to encourage her too much. You know, because
Why not?
This musician...
Why not?
This musician world...
It runs in the family. Yeah.
This musician world is packed. It's packed.
But she has inherited it. Maybe she doesn't have a choice at this point.
Yeah, she sings her own songs all the time. They sound really good, I have to say. Nice. She comes up with really catchy hooks. It's all the pop songs she's listening to.
So we should be expecting another Kuti to hit the stages soon.
Yeah, we already have my nephew, you know. We already have my nephew, my brother, my nephew, and me right now. You know, and he just graduated from Trinity. He's an amazing musician. I think, as in, you know, in terms of musicianship, you know, he's the best we've had since my dad. You know, in terms of his dedication to the full, to musicianship. You know, musicianship is one part of music. But what I'm saying is a great instrumentalist.
But are there any?
Very good composer, and he's young. You know, he's 23 or something. He's only going to get better.
Then I guess I want to ask: are there any you know, African up and coming African artists that excite you right now? Like, who have you been listening to?
Okay. Let me think so that I don't miss any of my friends out and then they get angry. It's my wife that knows. She's the one that plays all this new music out there. But there's a guy in Lagos called Tommy Thomas that is doing some really interesting stuff that I like. Off the top of my head.
Yeah.
You know, in America also there's this Sierra Leonean boy in America, but he's not young anymore. Musically, he's doing really well. You know, he's kind of a big artist now, called IDK.
Okay. Yeah.
I like his music.
All right. Well, you know, we're at the 1 hour mark. I do not know if you are okay to continue or if you have things to do.
I mean, I'm ready to call it a night. You know.
Okay.
But I'm waiting for you at the interviewer.
Well, you know, we wanted to stay casual-ish. It's really up to you. But then let's end off on a big question. Do you have hope for, you know, the coming days that we are faced with? The coming days that we are faced with, you know, the future. Do you have hope for the future of Africa and the world?
I feel humanity is at a point right now where, you know, this generation, like Frantz Fanon said, you know, every generation, out of obscure, out of relative obscurity, must find their mission and either decide to fulfill or betray it. So I think for sure, we have defined our responsibility of this generation. And I truly believe that the hope lies in us not betraying it. And as long as I have hope in the people, I have hope. Because this generation, more than ever before, the people are beginning to understand their own power, which is important.
Okay, but then thinking down, to the next 30 years, what is the Nigeria and what is the Africa that you want to see, for your daughter, for her generation?
Oh, that's very simple. I want to see an Africa that can fulfill the potential of all African people, where every African child born in this continent, without having to, scamper around the world like a wanderer, can become their best self, where our hopes and aspirations can be met. And that is my only dream and ambition for this continent. I want to see an Africa that doesn't only benefit, a handful of Africans to the detriment of millions of us, globally, actually, because not only is the neglect of the Africans of the continent, insulting to the continent, the neglect of Africans all over the world is an insult to the continent as well. And all this must be the inspiration, the inspiration must be the restoration of our dignity globally as men and people.
Well, Seun, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure. This was a great way to end.
I'm an old man now.
Yeah. Well, we're in Tanzania. It is past 1 o'clock here in the morning. So. Well, yeah, it's been lovely speaking to you. We hope to have you on again sometime. And, all the best to you, your family, and for the future.
Thanks, guys.
Presidency soon?
But maybe chairman of the party, Chairman Seun, get used to it.
Okay.
Chairman Seun, get used to it.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
We shall be rooting for you.